Hello, dear ones. I welcome you to another episode of the research methods. And today I'm going to take you through the key stages and concepts in research processes. So, for you to undertake the research project, you have to first of all understand the introduction and the key concepts in research. Research is a process composed of several interlinks. The research process has several stages, which each stage builds on another. Stage 1 builds on stage 2. Stage 2 builds on stage 3, and so on and so forth until you get your research done. Now, a successful research depends on completing each stage successfully, and there is no way you can jump a stage. You must follow it systematically. You must follow it serially. These stages involves the definition of the research problems, the importance and scope of the literature review, and of course, problem definition, literature review. These are the stages. Conceptual framework, design, and analysis. Now, the research process starts by formulating a research problem that can be investigated through research procedures. So, formulate a research problem. That is, a research problem is basically your research topic. Which area interests you to research on? What interests you? What gap do you want to fill? What do you want to bring up that has not been done? Then you start with a broad area, narrow it to a specific issue, and there are steps in which you are to follow in order to have a good research problem. How to formulate a good research problem. That is to identify the broad problem area through the process of observing and focusing on the situation. Now, such an area should be related to the professional interests and goals of the researcher. Then the second step is to identify a specific problem within it that will form the basis of the research study. This may be done through interviews and review of research literatures. Then you have to ensure that the problem is feasible and relevant. The characteristics of good research problem, it should lead to findings that have widespread implications in a particular area. And it should also challenge some commonly held assumptions or truism. And then it should also review the inadequacies of existing laws, views, or policies. It should also cover a reasonable scope that is not too narrow or too general. Now, what are the factors that determine the scope of a research study? These factors are the time available to carry out the study. And of course, financial challenges is always there to carry out the study. And then the availability of equipment needed to carry out the study, and then the availability of subjects and units of the study. So, therefore, a research problem refers to some difficulty which the researcher experiences in the context of either a theoretical or practical situation and wants to obtain a solution for the same. However, a research problem exists if the following conditions are met. And there must be an individual or group which has some difficulty or the problem, and there must be some objectives to be attained. So there must be alternative means or course of action for obtaining the objectives one wishes to attain. And then there must be some doubt in the mind of a researcher with regards to the selection of alternatives. Also, there must be some environment to which the difficulty pertains. The following must be observed by a researcher in selecting a research problem or a subject of study. The subject which is overdone should not be normally chosen, for it will be a difficult task to throw any new light in such a case. Controversial topic should not become the choice of an average researcher. When you are a beginner, you don't choose a controversial subject to research on. And it should not be too narrow or too vague. Problems should be avoided. Too vague problems should be avoided. It should not be too narrow, and too vague problems should be avoided. That is, the problem cannot be ascertained. Then the subject selection for research should be familiar and feasible so that the related research material and sources of research are within your reach. The importance of the subject, the qualifications and the training of a researcher, the cost involved, and the time factor must be considered. Then, the selection of a study must be preceded by a preliminary study. There are several ways of identifying a specific research problem from the broad area. These include existing theories. For every basic for theory-based research, a theory contains generalization and hypothesized principles which can be scientifically tested, and such tests can be done through the research process. And then the existing literature. Reading articles in professional and academic journals and textbooks on the broad area to get a good background of basic information and an insight into various issues that could be studied. And then another sources where you can identify a topic or research problem is through discussions with experts. And discussions on general topics, either in class or in seminars, are sources of current problems that could be researched. And then, following the previous research studies, the studies that had already been conducted can also suggest a topic for further research. So this is, and then the replication. Replicating a study involves carrying out a research project that has been done previously. Now, in this case, the problem and procedures of the research are identical to a study that has been previously done. Replication is usually done to find out whether findings hold over time and across regions. So take for instance, if if the research was confided in a particular region or area, one can take the 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 same problem to a broader area to ascertain the findings. Now, the media. The issues which are frequently reported in the media can also form the basis of a research problem. And then personal experiences. On the aspect of personal experiences, existing work experiences or consulting work, first-hand observations and reflections on intriguing experiences could be sources of research problems where you can find research, and with this you can identify a particular problem to work on. Then importance and scope of literature review. So once the problem is formulated, a brief summary of it should be written down. Then the review of literature involves the systematic identification, location, and analysis of documents containing information related to the research problem being investigated. It should be extensive and thorough because it is aimed at obtaining detailed knowledge of the topic being studied. So, this literature review should not just be aimed at writing what others have said, but it is meant to fully analyze the different aspects of the topic at hand, different perspectives, any controversies or differences that may exist within the body of knowledge. And then, one of the key styles of writing of literature review is that of the funnel. The funnel approach to writing is whereby the researcher begins with a general view of the matter at hand and slowly works into more specific issues as relates to the research problem. Then, what is the purpose of a literature review in your research work? The purpose of this literature review, one, is to determine what has already been done already to the research problem being studied. And this will help the researcher to avoid unnecessary and unintentional duplication. And then form the framework within which the research findings are to be interpreted. And also demonstrate his or her familiarity with the existing body of knowledge. Then, another purpose is to review strategies and instruments. The strategies and instruments or procedures and measuring instruments that have been found useful in investigating the problem in question. So this will help the researcher to avoid mistakes that have been made by other researchers. Benefits, to also benefit from other researchers' experiences and clarify how to use certain procedures which one may only have learned in theory. So the third one is to help suggest other procedures and approaches which will help improve the research study. Then also to familiarize the researcher with the previous studies, which facilitates interpretation of the result of the study. And if there is a contradiction, the literature review might provide rationale for the discrepancy. So, It will also help the researcher to limit the research problem and to define it better, and as well helps to determine new approaches and stimulate new ideas. The researcher may be alerted to research possibilities which have been overlooked in the past. Then the other aspect is the approaches that have been proved to be futile will be reviewed through literature review, and it will pulls together, integrate, and summarize what is known in an area, and it will help to review gaps in information and areas where major questions will remain. That brings us to the end of today, and I thank you for your attention. And please, if there is any question or concern and how you are to go about your research project, kindly write in the comment section. It will be attended to promptly. Thank you very much, and continue to watch our next video, the part 2 of this research process.